Hello, I'm Anthony the Pup Dundas, and you're listening to the weekly Dartscast 174.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf. I'm Alex Moss, and for the first time in, I think, 3 weeks, reunited with my co-host, Darts statistician, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing, sir?
I'd like to say I'm well rested after 3 weeks off from this, but I've been traveling across the U.S. and Mexico for work and a wedding over the last few weeks. So not as well rested as I could be, and not as well rested as but still more well rested than you and our producer Hannah, who had a great time at the Lakeside, and we do wish Hannah a speedy recovery. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy last couple of weeks for us, hasn't it? And as you say, a shout out to our producer Hannah, all her hard work at Lakeside last week. Plenty of interviews on this feed to go and have a listen to if you haven't already. And we're going to be starting the show with a look back at the WDF World Championship, which of course myself and Hannah were at. And you're going to hopefully we'll hear from the two senior winners, Neil Duff and Beau Greaves, a little later on the show. Still trying to get them to get a time for both of those. But you are definitely going to hear from Barry Van Peer a little bit later on, who's making his European Tour debut this weekend, a long-awaited debut. But yeah, let's start with the WDF World Championship and Neil Duff making history as the first WDF Men's World Champion and the first from Northern Ireland. How impressed were you with his run to the title?
Well, I think you have to be very impressed. And we'll get to the final in a second because I don't think the stats fully do justice. But if you look before that, okay, he wasn't tested in the first round, or his first round, wasn't really tested in his second match. But then in the quarterfinals, he was going against the player who up until then had been the man of the tournament in Jim McEwen, and he fell 3 sets down, 2 legs to 1 down. And from that point on, he only dropped 3 legs the rest of the match, coming back to win 4 sets to 3, winning, what would that be, 11 of the last 14 legs, and averaged over 94 to do that. That's a very good standard at this level. And then in the semifinals, going against the player who, after Jim McEwen, was the best player in the tournament up till then, Richard Veenstra, who just 2 rounds earlier shattered the Lakeside World Championship record, averaging nearly 105, and still played pretty darn well against the top seed Brian Rahman, averaging nearly 95 again. Neil Duff beat him 5 sets to 2 to book his spot in the final. Those were 2 very, very good wins, and they made him rightfully so the favorite entering the final and the best player in the tournament entering the final. That said, in the final, I think you have to look at it as a tale of 2 matches, because there's no way to say it other than that he was very poor for the first 4 sets, falling behind 3 sets to 1. The 3 sets he lost to 0 in that time frame, and was averaging well under 80. And it wasn't that Thibault Tricole was playing all that well. Tricole was hitting at the right times, but Neil Duff wasn't doing anything, was not looking like the player he was. But from that point on, for the last 7 sets, he averaged 93.74 and over 30 legs. Over the last 25 legs, he averaged 95.85. Over the last 22 legs, he averaged 97.13. So you see how his game, which was not there for the first 4 sets, quickly lifted and then became for the WDF and as well as the BDO prior to that, at the standard that world champions played at. And he kept that going for 22 legs, and there's really no reason to think, or 30 legs if you go those entire final 7 sets, and there's no reason to think he would have dropped off if the match had to go a little bit longer. He was playing at the level. That 87 average doesn't do him justice because of how good he was after falling behind 3 sets to 1. He deserved to be the world champion. He looked like the world champion. And, well, he is the world champion.
Yeah, and that is why you are the darts statistician. Some great stats for it there from the final. And I guess, yeah, if you look at it on paper and you're looking back on the game, an 87 average to win the final, people will be saying, some people, what they usually say about comparing the standard to the PDC and saying that's nowhere near. But you delve a little bit deeper into the week, and he pulled off some big results, as you say, 3-0 down against Jim McEwen, who had averaged 101 in the first round, comes back and wins that 4-3. The semi-final against Richard Veenstra, as you mentioned, breaking that Lakeside record average with the 104 just 2 rounds a few days earlier, beats him 5-2, and that game was 2-2, and he runs away with it 3 straight sets. But to come back as he did in the final the biggest game of your career, biggest game of your life, and to be 2-0 down, lose the first sets 3-0, and then be 3-1 down, that took a lot. And as you say, with how he's performed from that point onwards, does deserve a hell of a lot of credit. And this is someone that going into the tournament was 25-1. He was 33-1 for Wayne Mardle, who's going to be very happy with himself after he put a bet on him to win the title. But he was one of those players that there were question marks around him. And that goes for a lot of the players in this field. When we were doing our preview for the event, there was a lot of the players that had never played at Lakeside before, or they'd never played in a World Championship. And even as the fifth seed, Neil Duff was one of those players making their debut. So we weren't quite sure how he was going to get on. And this is someone that's been playing darts for a little while now, not to the World Championship kind of events, but he's someone that the last few years we have seen him start to make those strides. And I first met him at the World Masters 2019 when he made the quarterfinals, and he said to me, if I commit to the tour, it was the BDO tour back then, it's now the WDF tour. If I commit to the tour, I'm going to be dangerous. I'm going to do some damage. And he's now a world champion. And you look back to the last couple of years, yes, there's been a lot of breaks with the pandemic, but before the pandemic, he was starting to make some decent runs. He was starting to play more of the circuit. And then since the tour's come back, sort of September, October time last year, we've seen him pick up titles, the England Nationals, the Slovak Masters a couple of months ago. And even recently, a local level, we know he plays a lot of darts back home in Northern Ireland. He had 113 average in one of his county games. He won a title before coming over to Lakeside. So he was a player that you could see was coming over with a lot of confidence about how he could do. And in one of his first interviews of the week, he said, I'll see you on Sunday for the finals. That just tells you how much confidence he was bringing into the week. And this was a tournament that was going into it wide open. There wasn't really a clear favourite going into it. And he's got over those hurdles, some tougher than others, but to come through a last set decider in the final and to do it the way he did as well was mightily impressive. And he's a world champion. He's now the WDF World #1 as well. That deserves a mention as well. And to put darts even more on the map in Northern Ireland as well, becoming a world champion, deserves a lot of credit and well deserved as well.
Of course, and as you mentioned, first world champion, first even finalist from Northern Ireland. But let's talk about the beaten finalist, who was also the first from his country to make a world championship final, and the first to make any televised final in steel tip darts, Thibault Tricole. What could this past week do for French darts?
Borrow a line from Chris Murphy in the commentary. I think he said that Thibault was the trailblazer of French darts, and he certainly is that, isn't he? He made his World Championship debut, the first player from France to play in a World Championship. That was back at the O2 2 years ago. He got to the TV stages of the World Masters the year before, and even recently we've seen him become one of the first players from France to play on the Pro Tour over in the PDC. So he's someone that has been making a lot of history for his country, and you got to say France isn't a big country for darts. It's not one of the most popular sports. I remember we spoke to the head honcho of PDC Europe a couple of years ago now. That this might have changed by now anyway, but Werner von Moltke said that PDC Europe, all the events they've put on, all the Euro Tour events, they've never sold a single ticket to someone in France for one of their events. That might have changed by now a couple of years later. It's certainly going to change now, you'd think, but you think back to then, and France, not a big country for darts. It's had the French Open dating back to 1978. I was doing a little bit of research before we started looking at the events that they do put on in France. They've not had the French Open on since 2019. That's mainly, you'd say, probably due to the pandemic, because that event is usually held in the summertime, and we've not seen a lot of events at that level played in the last couple of summers. But it's not on the calendar for this year either. But going forward, you'd like to see some progression, wouldn't you? You'd like to see that French Open come back for 2023, and this is only going to do good things for darts in France. You'd like to think anyway. Okay, if he'd have won the title, that'd have been even better, but to go all the way to the final, make that history, and what a run he had as well. Some really tight games that he's come through, Thibault Tricole, to get to the final. And he said it himself in his interviews. He was happy with the wins, but maybe he wasn't so happy with the performances, and he said that he wasn't happy with how he's played, but to get to a final, I think you've got to take a lot of positives from that. And in some ways, it's difficult to gauge how much this is going to do for French darts, because you look at other players that have won big titles or gone on big runs. Look at players like Jose de Souza from Portugal. He won the Grand Slam. We've not really seen much happen in terms of darts in Portugal since then. So just because we see a player go on a deep run or win one of these major titles doesn't necessarily translate to a big boom for darts. But we'll see, and hopefully we'll get Thibault on, or we'll get someone on from the French Darts Federation over there to see what their plans are for darts, because I know soft tip was a bit bigger than steel tip back in the day, but to get to a final deserves a lot of credit as well for what he's done. And he's someone that, again, is making some strides. He wants to play PDC darts. He wants to play WDF darts. He wants to play as much darts as he can. And he's someone that is still improving. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet on the stage. So, yeah, I think there's plenty more to come from Thibault, at least. French darts, I think there's still a few question marks about that.
Yeah, I think it's way too early to say if this will do anything for French darts. But what I think it will be most likely to do is to give some inspiration and belief to the players that he's played against domestically for years now, that they too can go and try to challenge themselves and play at the highest level, or higher levels at least, and progress in the game. And, you look back to, we'll take Dutch darts 30 years ago before Raymond van Barneveld. When he first broke onto the scene, darts was not what it is today in the Netherlands, but it obviously gave players that belief and started to get some press coverage for it. And if you look 30 years later, well, the Dutch, after the 4 home nations in Ireland, are the leading stars of the game. They have the most tour card holders of any country other than England. They have the most major titles of any country other than England and Scotland. Actually, they might even be ahead of Scotland, because I'm forgetting that Michael van Gerwen just in and of himself, but throwing him out more than any country other than England and Scotland. And that's because of the depth and quality that did start before Barney, but obviously that Barney was the catapult for. But if you look, and this is not the first time I've done this. This is the first time I've done it for Thibault Tricole. But I remember when Mensur Suljovic broke through, I started to run some searches on Google News to try to see, was he getting any press in the Austrian news? And originally he wasn't, although when he made his first major final, he did get into Die Presse, which is the newspaper of record in Austria. Thibault Tricole isn't in Le Monde, but he did get mentioned in 3 different French newspapers yesterday, at least on the online versions. And that's not something you would normally see. If just running searches for him in the past, he would be lucky to get more than 1 or 2 a year in any French language newspaper. So it is showing that success breeds press coverage, and press coverage breeds new fans who might not have even known that darts was played professionally before. So I think this is obviously going to do well for darts in France. But I think the biggest thing is what I started with, that it's going to hopefully have some of those players that at times have beaten him, but at the very least have played against him a lot, to think, you know what, I too can go play in events because I know I'm good enough. I know I can hang with Tricole when I play him, and that will lead to more players playing, and that will lead in the long term to more coverage, and therefore the growth of French darts. I think that's where it starts, because the media coverage isn't like what it was for Mensur Suljovic when he broke through, just based on what I've seen today. And because of that, there still needs to be a little bit more growth first, but you can't do much better than making a world final to start that.
Definitely not. Well, let's move on to our first guest on this week's show, and it is the man that beat Thibault in Sunday's final to become the WDF Men's World Champion. Here's our chat with Neil Duff. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the newly crowned WDF Men's World Champion, Neil Duff. Thanks for the time, Neil. How you doing?
How you doing, Al? Yeah, good to be on with you again. Never get tired of the sound of that there, the introduction. Always been champion of the world. It's a bit surreal, but yeah, I'm looking forward to being used a lot over the course of the next year or so.
I was going to start off with that. I mean, have you got tired yet of being introduced as a world champion?
Not a chance. No one will ever get tired of that there. I'll be looking forward to the first exhibition or the first stage event where I'm actually called in, introduced as a world champion. Listen, that's what I worked for. That was the goal. That was the dream. And now that I've got it, I'm going to milk it for all it's worth.
Fair play. Well, we're talking on this Thursday afternoon. You've only just got back to Northern Ireland yesterday, the first few nights of the week, Monday and Tuesday. You've been on the road. What have you been up to since you won the title?
Yeah, we left the Lakeside Monday morning, come up to Haydock. Had to spend the night in Haydock with a bit of promotion stuff to do there. Not well, but my manager and my sponsor was with me, and we're all knackered and I think emotionally and physically drained. So we had a nice meal and an early night, and then we headed up. Then on Tuesday morning to Glasgow, we called in with Anthony Dundas and his work. Had some lunch, got a few photographs done there, and then I had an exhibition in the Drum G in Airdrie. It's a Glasgow Rangers supporters bar. That was amazing. The local team that plays on a Monday night came down, and I played a few games with them, and Andy Gorham, the goalie, called in, and a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends in that part of the world. So we had a few drinks and a good catch up, and it was actually nice. It was nice to unwind. The last week it's been a lot of pressure with the darts, so it was nice just to sit there and have a few games and have a laugh and mess about a wee bit. Yeah, it was great. But we came home yesterday. I wanted to get home to the family, and I wanted to get home and just try and settle back into some sort of normality again. Definitely.
Well, let's rewind back to when we last spoke. It was about 3 weeks before the Lakeside. You just won out in Slovakia. You then hit that 113 average in county darts. You won the Northern Ireland Gold Cup. Could the preparation have gone any better heading into the World Championship?
No, absolutely not. No, I was ready. In fairness, I was ready in December, January. But it being postponed and moved until April, I had to take it as an opportunity just to refocus and a bit more practice and try and tighten up my short game, my set-up play, my doubles. So, yeah, but I've been playing what I've been playing here. I've got the confidence where I can walk into any competition and I'll just take a look around and go, no, there's no one beating here today. And I've been able to transfer that to the stage play. The Lakeside was always going to be nervy, and how I would deal with that. So kind of from the interviews not there, you've seen that I was quite brash and cocky, but that's what I had been working on. So going into it, I was 100% ready. I had no doubt in my mind. I was quite vocal about it that I was going to win it because I knew I had put the work in, and I knew I was ready to do it.
Yeah, we definitely saw that confidence on show, and I know you mentioned in some of your interviews last week you were surprised to be 25-1 with the bookmakers to win Lakeside. I don't know if you saw Wayne Mardle got on you at 33-1. There was a lot of players playing in their first World Championship, and it did feel like a wide open event, but yourself, you were confident of going all the way.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Wayne. I actually was at an exhibition with them in Rossbray a few weeks ago, and they had like a Q&A afterwards, and someone had asked who to fancy for the Lakeside. Wayne told me I wouldn't win it. I wasn't going to win it. Well, he didn't say I wasn't going to win it, but he didn't think I was going to win it. I think he's got an interest with young Connor Scoot, and he had kind of tipped him. But listen, you go to a horse race, the horse doesn't know what price it is. You just got to go and do your thing regardless of what's going on in the background. I was surprised and kind of almost insulted that it was 25-1 with winning the pentathlon, with winning the national singles and Slovakia, but also like Scotland, Isle of Man, Wales, Denmark. I wasn't out of the quarterfinals. You know what I mean? I was always thereabouts. So I find it a little strange that where they were getting these odds from. But again, I said it on one of the interviews that I hope the bookies paid the price for it because someone wasn't doing their homework.
Definitely not. Well, speaking of Wayne, I saw you posted a picture of you two at an exhibition. It might have been the one that you just mentioned, and you said that you wouldn't do the beer mat trick again. Can you explain that one to us?
It kind of worked with the exhibition work. We mess around and try and make it fun for the guys out there. And you're not always going to be playing big players. You're not going to be playing strong players. But I do this thing where I cover the double. When I go down to the double, I cover the double with a beer mat. And yeah, I missed it by about 3 inches. I almost missed the beer mat. But I done it a couple of times on Tuesday night in Glasgow, and it paid off. So, but that's the sort of thing that any crowd at any exhibition wanted to see. And he gave me a hard time about it, so he did.
Good stuff. Well, let's look back at your run to the world title, and you start off with wins against Justin Thompson, one of the PDC tour card holders, Nick Fullwell. But I've got to mention the quarter-final with Jim McEwen, 3-0 down in sets. You survive match darts and you win 4-3. How much belief did you take away from a win like that?
I watched it this morning, so I did. I've seen clips and bits and pieces of it, but it was a funny old game. It was a game of two halves, really. But looking back on it, I wasn't playing bad. I didn't play bad the first couple of sets. I think Jim took his chances. I had a few scrappy darts, but at no point did I think I was out of it. At no point did I even try and think that I was defeated. Yeah, I dodged a couple of bullets. I absolutely did. But I knew after when I went 3-0 down what I had to do. And I went out and I think I banged, 10 or 11 180s in them 4 sets. Got myself back into it, but it was probably, rather than go out and the way I done with Justin and win straight sets, it was a good learning experience for me. It got me more acclimatized to the stage to go into my next match, and it shows in the next match because when I played Richard Veenstra, I was a far better player. The Veenstra match, when it's watched back, or when anyone that watched it, that's whenever people start to see, yeah, this guy is capable of winning this here,
From 2-2, you win 3 straight sets to knock out Richard Veenstra, get to the final. I know Sunday was an important birthday in the family, but what was it like for you waking up on that Sunday, getting ready to play in a world final? I kind of brain trained myself that it's not a final. It's another match. It's not a semi-final. It's another match. It's another day's work. Like from the start, I knew, and I said that I would be there on Sunday, but I had to look at it like it was one step, and it was the next step, and it was the next step on to hit the target, to hit the goal that I want to achieve. So yeah, Saturday night we had a pretty quiet one. By the time we got back, it was quite late, so I got up Sunday morning, my usual, had a bath just to keep the joints, keep the muscles nice and soft, and I took my wife and my daughter down. We went down to the working men's club and got a bite to eat, one thing or another, and just tried not to start overthinking the final, or thinking about the crowd, or thinking about the stage, or the heat, or the tempo of the game. So just, and then I went up to the room, had an hour and a half to myself, then met up with my sponsor and my manager, and we talked our game plan. And I'm sure the game plan wasn't to go 2-0 down against Thibault Tricole, but you came back superbly, and our co-host on this show, Burton DeWitt, he crunched the numbers, and I think it was after the 4th or 5th set, you were averaging 93 for the rest of it and 97 for the last 4 sets. So what clicked, or did you just think that maybe it took you a little bit longer to get settled into that occasion of world final?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think it just took me a little bit longer, where Thibault kind of hit the ground running. Again, I missed a few chances. I think the first 2 sets were straight sets against me, but after when I went 3, we went 2 each, then I went 3-2, and I knew I still wasn't out of it. I wasn't playing great, but I knew I wasn't out, and my manager says, pick up the pace, and it's the same as what I'd done with Jim McEwen. Once I started throwing a little quicker and with more rhythm, then the high scoring, the power scoring started, and I knew then that I was going to get really back into the game again,
Yeah, it was a great final, and you win the last set 3-0. Can you describe what that feeling's like? That tops goes in, and you are announced as a world champion.
Listen, it's like Jim. It was like Jim on Friday, and you'll always hear people saying the hardest double is the last double. But I didn't think of it that way. I was kind of, once I got my nose in front, broke him in the first leg. That was me. Hold through. All I have to do is hold through twice, and I'm a world champion. So I held through, and I think he had a crack at double 12, I think, in the last leg, So, but I think I knocked the 171 before my set-up play, but he was on 50. Took an extra few seconds, took a drink of water, just got myself mentally prepared for it. As always, when you leave yourself 50, it's make sure the big number first. You don't want to start messing around and have to chase right the board just to get yourself a shot at a double. The first dart was a peach, at tops was a peach. Just where any dart player wants to put it, if they're not going to hit it, I didn't want to go under. Put it just above the wire and then use it on the third dart, and it went perfectly.
We've seen in the past when players have won titles or big matches on TV, they've thrown whatever darts they've got left in their hand across the stage. You'd used all your darts, so your glasses go flying. Are they all right?
Yeah, they're okay. They needed replaced. Again, because I've been using them in their internet case and that there all week, the legs have kind of buckled a wee bit, and a lot of the times through the match I was having to push them up to the bridge of my nose slightly. So I think, I honestly, my train of thought, I don't know why I did it. I think subconsciously I knew that I was going to be emotional, so the glasses had to come off anyway. But yeah, Nick Rolls, he came across the stage and picked them up for me and made sure I got home with them.
Good stuff. Well, when we first spoke at the World Masters 2019, you told me the story of you sleeping on your manager's floor with tiles around you after a week at Lakeside. Are there any stories that you can share from the hotel?
Not really. Well, I slept in the manager's floor again on the first Sunday night we arrived. We were supposed to have 2 rooms, but they only had the one available on the Sunday night, so we had got a family room, so the sponsor took a bed, my manager took a bed, and I slept on the floor. It really does seem to suit me, but once I got my own room, then I was able to relax more and prepare more. But all in all, it was been a brilliant week. We sat in the hotel with one of the Canadian guys and a couple of the New Zealand ones, and had a good laugh. Richard Ashton and Pup and all the rest of the guys were all fantastic. They really put you at ease, and we had a few good nights in the hotel. Karaoke was going, and yeah, listen, the WDF, there's a family thing to it. We all kind of work together, and I said it at the start, kind of middle of the week, that you almost feel as if the Lakeside, that it pulls that family just that wee bit closer together, because it doesn't matter like who you are. Richard mentioned his wife come up and give me a hug before we went on. You know, I don't know, warms the heart a wee bit, you know, and they're all a great bunch. That's what makes the Lakeside a lot wee bit special for me.
Yeah, it definitely comes across, and I felt that when I was there for the first weekend. And back to you, we spoke before about you being a latecomer to darts in your 30s. When you moved back in with your parents, you played for your dad's team, and now you're the first world champion from Northern Ireland. What does that mean to you?
Oh, it means everything to me. It means everything that I've ever worked for. That was the plan. It's everything to me. It's that I could do it for my daughter. That knowing that all my family and my friends and all, I mean, I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for the people of my town. They've been unreal. They put banners up around the town hall, and we have a bit of a homecoming party in the bar on Saturday night. Yeah, it's been awesome. Like, so it has. But now I'm a world champion. I want to be a good world champion. I want to go out. I'm not slacking any. I'll still work. I'll work as hard. The things that have been coming in the last few days, there's going to be a lot of travelling and a lot of work ahead of me. And I'm relishing the fact that's my next goal, is to be a good world champion.
Definitely. Well, you touched on it there. We should mention it is going to be a busy rest of the year for you as the world champion, and of course you're still juggling work with the darts. What are the plans? How are you going to juggle the two of them together this year?
Over the last couple of years, I've kind of worked to play. Now I'm in a very fortunate position where I can pick and choose where I'm going as far as the WDF tour is concerned. For me, the darts will come before work now. I'm financially stable, and having that trophy, there's a lot of money to be made while you've got that title, and I need to work on that there. And get out there and get as much of it as I can. With holding that title, the opportunities comes along as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to making that my work for the next 12 months. And yeah, it's going to be crazy, but I have the support of a great family, and yeah, I'll do bits and pieces of work whenever I can. I'm not trying to want to get one of these guys that can lie in bed to 10 o'clock or stand and play darts for 7 hours practicing, because that's not me. My routine will never change. Even this week, the past week at the Lakeside, and my manager tells me off for it, but my body clock is set. I get up at 5 to 6 every morning. So I'll get up and I'll get dressed and I'll go for a walk. I'll come back and I'll have a coffee, and this is all before anyone else gets up. So they're giving off because I'm up back in the room. Right, guys, we're going for breakfast. The team's still lying in bed. But it's just me. It's what I do. So if I'm here and I'm in between competitions or travelling, I'll be working.
Good to hear. Well, you'll also be turning 50 this summer. Any plans yet on how you're going to celebrate that one, especially as you are going to be world champion when it comes around?
I don't make plans. I'm not really a big birthday person anyway, so I'm not. But I know the family are arranging a bit of a do and stuff like that there, you know. But after that, we'll see. We'll do a few of the seniors tour series. We've got another few things. I'm not going to mention too much until the press release for them. But yeah, I'm very lucky because my birthday falls in July and it's kind of during the holidays, so we get a chance to relax. We've got a house kind of from on the lake, and we go down there. Everyone's quite laid back. But, seniors tour, but Modus. I've got Modus before next month, and then a few of the WDF and Scotland next weekend, Wales, Holland, a couple of the ones that I've never done that I wanted to do, Bruges and Belfry and places like that there. Yeah, it's still going to be busy enough.
A busy time. And lastly, before we let you go, I know it's only been a few days since you won the Lakeside, but I'm sure you've been asked a few times now about the PDC and Q School. Is that something that you've got your eye on for next year, or is it still too early and you're going to think about it near the time?
I think for me it's too far down the road. There's other options out there. We said we would have a couple of days off, then we'll regroup with my management team. And there's a long way to go. If it hadn't have been, the Lakeside hadn't have been postponed, rescheduled, I would have been there this year. With the turn 50, there's a lot of money to be made on that seniors tour. I think I could put a dent in it. Never say never. The big thing before that there is to defend my title, and that's something that when it becomes October, November, December, that will be the prize for me, and that's where all my focus and attention will go to. What happens after that there, you'll just have to wait and see.
We'll be looking forward to it, and yeah, as you say, plenty of options for you for the rest of the year now, and congratulations again on becoming the world champion, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks again to Neil for joining us. Now continuing our review of Lakeside and over to the women's event, and Beau Greaves at 18 years old becomes the youngest women's world champion. It brings us on to our question of the week. Is she currently the best women's player in the world right now? What do you reckon?
Oh, it's a tough question, and I can't say that she is. And the biggest reason why I can't say that she is because we didn't see her get pushed. If we saw her get pushed by someone, maybe I would say that. And okay, fine. In her first match, to some extent, she was pushed by Veronica Ejas. But that was really it. And even in that, okay, she very nearly could have gone 2 legs to 1 down in that final set. But I think she was just so shocked that Veronica had come back at her that we never got to see her lift her game. But she played at a steady standard pretty much throughout, had a couple bad legs when she was a leg away from winning it. But she never really needed to lift her game. She dominated Aline de Graaf. She dominated Lorraine Winstanley. She dominated Kirsty Hutchinson, and for the first set averaged over a ton, and for the first couple sets was averaging in the high 90s. Still averaged a world record for a world final over 92 in that final. But she wasn't pushed, so we don't know what she can do when she truly is under pressure. We've seen what Fallon Sherrick can do when she's under pressure. We see that she can erase a 3-1 deficit and win 5-3, hitting a 170 out that she had to advance. She can beat Major champions like Mensur Suljovic, who I just mentioned in the last question, beat him twice, pushed Peter Wright all the way in a long-form match. We haven't seen what Beau Greaves can do, and until that, I can't say that she is the best. And I didn't mention Lisa Ashton, but have to mention Lisa Ashton as well, because we know what she can do when she's pressed as well. Beau Greaves has a lot of potential, and at the rate she's going, if she's not the best in the world, she'll absolutely be in that conversation pretty darn soon. But in an event that they didn't have the two players who, for this event, would have been considered the two best in the world, in Sherrick and Ashton, and because we didn't have to see her really get pushed, I'm not ready to anoint her the best. I am ready to anoint her the world champion, because she was unquestionably the player of the tournament, and she was unquestionably a deserved champion. And the way she looked, I wouldn't have been surprised if she had beaten both Ashton and Sherrick if given the opportunity. But I'm still going to put those two ahead of her, because we know what they can do under pressure. We don't yet know what she can do under pressure, but hopefully we'll know sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And I've got to say, it's been one of our most popular question of the weeks so far this year. Just looking at the poll at the moment, we only started it this morning, but over 600 votes so far, and we've got Beau Greaves leading the poll at the moment, 48%, Lisa Ashton 28%, Fallon Sherrick 23%, and other going with 1%. We'll read out some of the messages that we've had from some of our listeners as well. Rachel Gallagher agreeing with us, saying it's impossible to answer. They're all equally as good. It just depends on the day, venue and crowd. All three need to attend all Women's Series events in order to determine who played consistently the best over that year. We've had Luke get in touch as well, saying very similar. It's very hard to tell at this stage because Fallon and Lisa didn't play at the Lakeside. Arguably, Lisa is the best floor player and Fallon is the best stage player, so they're fairly equal in a way. Beau is definitely in the mix, but it's hard to predict where she stands right now. And I think I'm in a similar opinion for that as well. We've got to give the credit to Beau Greaves, and we had her on our show just before the Lakeside, in the lead up to the Lakeside, after she won those 3 titles in the Isle of Man, and it's well documented the problems that she's had in her game with dartitis, and to looks like overcome that pretty well. You know, the throw looked very good at the weekend and all week at Lakeside, and to go and do what she did, especially in that final as well against Kirsty Hutchinson with the 92 average and dropping just one leg on the way to winning that title in the final, deserves a lot of plaudits, and rightly so. And you looked on social media as well on Sunday evening, you saw top professionals like Gerwyn Price, Damon Heta, to name a few. They were getting on Twitter and writing to say, how well is this Beau Greaves? She's a good player. And I think it's something that we thought was going to happen sooner rather than later. And of course, the last couple of years have been difficult because we've not had this Women's World Championship, which we'll come on to in a moment. But she's come back and she's won the title in impressive fashion. And yeah, she's got that first one under her belt. And I think a lot of our listeners, a bit like us, really want to see all these top players in the same room, in the same venue, playing each other more often than they have done in the last couple of years. And with the PDC Women's Series, we know we're going to see Lisa Ashton, we're going to see Fallon Sherrick there. We're not sure about Beau Greaves. She played in the very first Women's Series in 2020, but we've not seen her play in it since then. Hopefully, we'll see her playing some of the Women's Series events, and we'll put Mikuru Suzuki in the conversation as well. I know it didn't end well for her title defence, but she's got to be in the mix as well. And I think you'd probably put those 4 as the top 4, and maybe Kirsty Hutchinson as number 5, a close number 5 after getting to the final. But yeah, I think it's a tricky one at the moment. For me, I'm probably going to put Lisa and Fallon as 1 and 2. Don't ask me which order, because I think it is very close. But I think Beau Greaves, she's cemented her spot as number 3 for now. But hopefully we'll see her and all the ladies back in action in the same tournaments, because I don't think we've seen those 4 playing in the same tournament for at least 3 years, I want to say. It's been a long time. So yeah, hopefully for this rest of 2022, now that we have got all these events coming back, we're going to see all these ladies go up against each other. And yeah, we'll come back to this question maybe at the end of the year. We could be saying Beau Greaves is that number 1.
I think the only thing I disagree with what you said is leaving out Rhiannon Sullivan in that conversation. I think she, alongside the person who beat her in the semifinals, are right there. So I'll make it a top 6 to give shout out to the beaten semifinalist. But welcome return, obviously, for the Women's World Championship last week, first in over 2 years. Where does the women's game go from here?
I think it continues to progress. And I should mention as well a shout out to the other title winners that we haven't mentioned. Eleanor Kearns winning the Girls World Championship. That's the first ever Girls World Championship. And Bradley Roche from the Netherlands winning the boys event. So congratulations to both of those. But yeah, I think the Women's World Championship, that was something that coming into this tournament, coming into the Lakeside, was generating a lot of interest. And Beau Greaves and Mikuru Suzuki, those were the two ladies at the top of the betting, if you like. That those were the two favourites. They didn't play each other in the end, but yeah, there was a lot of excitement about the Ladies World Championship coming back, and I think as well the prize fund as well, because we know it's been said quite a few times now that the last BDO World Championship, that prize fund was cut dramatically, not just the men's event but also the ladies event as well. And I think the total prize fund was £20,500. Well, Beau Greaves has just pocketed 25 grand, and that's a record for this tournament. And even the runner-up, Kirsty Hutchinson, 12.5 grand, which is more than what the winner of the last Lakeside 2019 got. So I think it's been great to see this tournament come back, and also some of the new players that we've maybe not seen before. Like with the men's event, we talked about how there was a lot of new faces, a lot of people making that World Championship debut, and that was the same with the ladies one as well. And okay, yeah, there was maybe some of the ladies that turned up and didn't produce their A game and will probably go away a bit disappointed with how they've played, but you've got to say that it's a first go at a World Championship for them, a first attempt at playing in front of the cameras, playing on a stage like that. And I think it's only going to benefit them going forward. And with that extended field of 24 players, we did get to see a lot of new faces, and some of them as well, they certainly caught the eye. And one we've got to mention, Veronica Ihash from Hungary, getting that 164 checkout, the highest ever checkout in a Women's World Championship at Lakeside. And she was the only one to take a set off Beau Greaves, as we've mentioned, so she deserves a mention as well. And a couple other players as well, Suzanne Smith, Joe Clements, they played in the first round. They're two players that are in the top 8 of the WDF rankings heading into this tournament, two players that we didn't know much about, but they served up a really good game, and the averages were in the mid-60s, but it was a really entertaining watch, one of the best games I saw on the opening weekend. But yeah, just to see this event back up, I think is a great sign for the ladies. And you've also got to say as well, some of these players that we have seen, maybe they're going to get the bug to play a little bit more this year. Some of them would have qualified via their regional rankings, so they wouldn't have done too much travelling to get in, but maybe we'll see them come back and play some of the bigger WDF events, and even the women's series as well. I know there's a lot of interest heading into that next women's series at the end of this month. Who are we going to see play? Because the last one, I think we saw around 100 players in it, which was a record. Hopefully we're going to see a lot of these players that we saw at Lakeside give it a go as well. And again, the more times we see these ladies go up against each other in competition, I think is only going to help raise the overall standard of the ladies' game.
Yeah, it's a tough question to know where the women's game goes from here, because there's really two organizations that now are trying to put on the best events for women. It's almost like the split in darts from 30 years ago, except it's on the women's side as opposed to the men's side. But they're not competing against each other, and that's the difference. They're both trying to promote the women's game and grow the women's game more than anything through putting on needed events. The PDC obviously, as we've had guests on before, say do it at such a professional level that they're not used to having seen before. And the WDF, through its various member organizations, just are able to put on events every weekend all around the world. But with that, because they're both sometimes going head to head on a given weekend or a given week, you will end up with like what we saw before, where Beau Greaves did not go and play the women's series, and a few of the other top players didn't, because it was the same weekend as the Isle of Man. And because the two aren't really competing with each other, I think there should, and hopefully will in the coming years, be some level of coordination where the WDF does not have one of their flagship, or at least assure to the best they can that none of their member organizations have one of their flagship Category A events going on at the same time as a women's series, and PDC vice versa. And it would require some level of coordination going into any given calendar year as they prepare the fixtures for the year to make sure that we minimize that. Obviously, there will be events going on opposite one another at certain times, because there are events going on all over the world. But there shouldn't be the Category A events, certainly not a major event going on at the same time as the women's series. And the PDC, when they have the Women's World Match Play in July, that shouldn't be going on opposite one of the WDF's major events, because we want to have the best players playing against each other, because that's how they will grow. Fallon Sherrick doesn't get better from playing, I won't mention any names, but players who are ranked 20-somethings in the WDF. That's not going to help her. What's going to help her, alongside obviously challenging herself in the World Series events and other events against men, is playing people like Beau Greaves and Lisa Ashton as much as she can. So some coordination is needed to grow the game. I think what we're at the point now where the women's game goes from here is that you have two organizations who are, for the first time, really looking out for women's darts and are trying to grow the game. Because on the WDF side, just financially, the biggest draw of the players who are going to be playing in it are the female players. If you can get Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrick to show up, people are not going to be tuning in to watch any of those men's players more often than not, because they are, relatively speaking, unknown amateurs. The names that are playing in the WDF are the top female players. And on the PDC side, they're seeing, obviously, there is some financial potential for the growth of women's game. The two organizations, though, need to work together to make sure that the best players are playing each other as often as possible, which means not putting on events that will detract from each other as often whenever they can avoid it. That's where the women's game goes from here. There needs to be some level of coordination, and there needs to be this continued commitment on both sides. I think that second thing is there, but the coordination isn't, and that risks losing out on opportunities, both within the PDC umbrella and in the WDF umbrella, for those players to continue to progress and to challenge the top men and the top, well, everyone in the world.
And now move on to our next guest on this week's show. It is with the newly crowned WDF Women's World Champion, Beau Greaves.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the newly crowned Women's World Champion, Beau Greaves. Thanks for the time, Beau. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad, you?
Doing good, thank you. And firstly, congratulations on the big win on Sunday. We're talking on this Wednesday afternoon, still only 3 days removed from Lakeside. What have the last 3 days been like for you since becoming world champion?
Just absolutely mental, to be honest. I've had all the interviews and loads of phone calls, and obviously so many nice messages, and yeah, just been nice to get on there and enjoy it with my family.
Good to hear. Well, we last had you on the show after your hat-trick of titles in the Isle of Man, which was around 3 weeks before Lakeside. Looking back now, how important was that weekend in the Isle of Man for you in the lead up to the World Championship?
Oh, massive. I think just being on the stage for 4 games was obviously just massive, because before that I'd obviously played county, but playing competitive darts by yourself, obviously for yourself, and that was, looking back, that was much needed, I think.
Well, let's look back on your run to the world title. And first up, it was Hungary's Veronika Ihas. You had that record-breaking 164 checkout, and she was the only one to take a set off you last week. How much did you take away from that first game and being pushed to a last set?
Yeah, definitely a lot. I remember coming off and just feeling so relieved. And I said in my interview, obviously, that I knew when the draw came out that I knew she was a really good player. But obviously the first game, I think everyone's nervous on your first game, and she had already had a game on the stage. So I was just so grateful to get over the line in that game. But yeah, what a finish. When she hit the 2 treble 19s, I thought this is going in, and it did. And you know what, fair play to it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great finish, and from there you get past Eileen de Graaf and Lorraine Winstanley in straight sets to book your place in the final. And it's worth mentioning as well your schedule last week. You played your first game of the tournament on the Thursday, then you played 4 straight days. Did you prefer it that way, or was the wait a little bit too long, not waiting until the 6th day to play your first game?
I think I preferred it, to be fair. I think coming obviously late into the tournament, I just preferred it just because obviously I weren't one of the first games and everyone had already settled into it, and I got there and I was looking forward to it. And then I think just playing 4 days in a row was probably a lot better for me, actually, thinking back. But either way, I weren't too fussed.
Well, let's discuss the final on Sunday. You dropped just 1 leg to beat Kirsty Hutchinson, who was also playing in her first World Final. 4-0, 92 average, a record for a Women's World Championship final. Did you have any nerves up on the stage? Because watching it looked like you were so calm up there.
I was definitely taking a lot of deep breaths. I remember doing that, but I was just more excited than anything. I didn't really think about playing bad. I didn't think about losing. I just felt really comfortable playing Kirsty, and I think that was a big bonus for me. There was no, I was just thinking, if I am to get beat, then I get beat. And I'm sure I'll have many, hopefully more to come and more finals. But yeah, I think I enjoyed it that much that the nerves just went out the window, to be honest.
And we've known your name since a young age on the darts circuit. You've grown up, I guess, dreaming of playing in a World Championship and lifting that trophy. What was that moment like when the winning double goes in and you are announced as a World Champion?
Yeah, it's one of them feelings that you can't get over. I don't think I've still got my head around it now, and I just keep saying to people that I haven't stopped smiling, and I haven't, just because I think being so young, obviously a lot of stuff has been said over the years about you'll be a world champion, this and this, and for it to just finally come true is just, honestly, everything just feels like a dream. I think now I've done it once, and that's enough for me, to be honest. It was just one of the best weeks of my life.
And I'm sure you've seen some of the reaction on social media since you win on Sunday, the likes of Gerwyn Price, Damon Hetter, a lot of the players go into social media to say how impressed they were with you. Have you seen much of that?
I did. A lot of people said, have you seen what Gerwyn Price said about you? And I replied to his story on Instagram, and he replied back to me just saying how brilliant I were. Honestly, I was like, fangirl, and I never thought that people would see it and stuff. I think when you're in that moment, you're just thinking about the winning, and then obviously everything that comes after is such a massive bonus. But yeah, it's just nice to get them words off of obviously players that have been there and done it, and it's just nice to, like I say, just feel appreciated for how the game went, and just brilliant.
And when we last spoke, we talked about your struggles with dartitis and coming through it, and you said to us that you'd never give up and you never thought that was going to be the end for you in darts. So I guess lifting that title on Sunday must make you so proud of how you've stuck at it.
Yeah, I said in a previous interview, I said I've never felt as proud of myself as I have now coming through that. I think it just made me just enjoy darts a lot more, and I'm just saying that to everyone now because it's just the truth. I enjoy playing darts, and that's where the winning comes from. And there's no pressure. I'm not thinking, I've got to win this, I've got to win that. You know what I mean? I'm just nice and chill, and darts is just enjoyable for me. I know I'm a world champion, but I'm not a serious dart player. I just like to go with the flow and enjoy myself first.
And not just the trophy you picked up on Sunday, but also £25,000, a record in the ladies' game. I think you mentioned about maybe buying a car. Have you got any particular car in mind?
I haven't yet, but I've still got to pass my test. But yeah, hopefully I'll pass that, and then I'll get one before, but just something that'll get me from A to B will do. Don't want anything fancy. Just wanted to get a car, do my insurance, and then I can just go anywhere. I can start driving my dad to darts now instead of him taking me everywhere.
I'm sure he'll enjoy that. Well, the youngest world champion too at just 18, and you said before one day you wanted to maybe go full time in darts. Does this title set you up to do that, or is darts still going to be something on the side for you?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Obviously, I'm going to be doing darts for a long, long time. I know that, but yeah, we'll just see. We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to think too much into the future. I'm just going to try and live with this moment now and enjoy myself. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Not thinking too much, but just enjoy everything that's happened the past week.
And I know you've been asked about the next weekend of the PDC Women's Series coming up at the end of this month. Have you got your eye on that, or are you going to be sticking with the WDF and the local scene for now?
I think I'm a bit of 50-50, to be honest. Obviously, I'm going to Scottish Open. I think that's next week, and then I might do. I don't think I've got out to lose. I don't have anything to prove now, I suppose. I've done one of the biggest things in darts, so I'll just enjoy it. But yeah, I'll have a word with my dad and see what he thinks, and then we'll just see. But obviously, I'm still keen on the WDF stuff, and yeah, just making sure I'm just not doing too much and just have fun with it first.
Every week on our Twitter we put out a question of the week, and this week we asked our listeners who is the best ladies player right now. You're currently winning the vote. Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrick, they've got a lot of votes too, and we'd probably put Mikuru Suzuki in there as well as maybe a top 4 in the ladies game right now. And we were trying to look back the last time all 4 of you played in the same tournament. We think it was the England Open in 2019. Can you remember how that went?
Ooh, I know one of them went really bad. I can't remember if that was the one I won or I got beat. I might be won a lot. I can't remember. But that seems like a long time ago till now. But yeah, just to even be like voted as that with all them obviously amazing dart players is just brilliant.
Well, we'll give you a reminder. You were 15 at the time, and I think you beat Mikuru Suzuki in the semi-finals.
Yeah, is that the one I won?
Yes.
Yeah. It's good. Come back to me now.
And then, of course, beating Fallon Cherokee in the final to win it. Do you think we'll see all four of you in the same competition, the same venue at some point this year?
I would hope so. I think it'd be... I know Lisa, I think she's coming back to do a few of the WDF. I think Fallon will. Obviously, I know Makuru's obviously got the travelling stuff, which is a shame because she's brilliant. But, yeah, I suppose it'd be good to have Lisa back and Fallon playing in them again, and it'd be brilliant. Just raises the standard, doesn't it, for ladies darts when you see all them names in the entry list. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, we can't wait for that. And you mentioned the Scottish Open. That's one of the next ones coming up for you. I think we've got the Welsh Open, the Dutch Open, and some big events coming up in the WDF. What have you got lined up, I guess, for the next few months?
I've got obviously I'm doing all the ones you've just mentioned, and then obviously the PDC is still a question mark, and then just some local stuff and just going back to normal. Just playing a few more darts again, and we'll see what pops up. What pops up over the few weeks, and whatever opportunities are thrown at me, and we'll see.
Excellent. And we should mention the support that you've got as well from your dad, and obviously your sister was in the crowd. We saw her quite often, and you put the picture up of your brother as well, who's been a big support. What does that support mean to you to have all them behind you?
Oh, it was brilliant. My sister was there with me all week. My mum and dad was there with me my first game, and they had to go on because of work and stuff. But then they came back down for the final, and you know what? I've got the most brilliant sponsors, and I've got, like I say, when my dad told me today, actually, when my brother Taylor rang him up, he said to me today when I sat on, I said, Tay couldn't speak when he was talking to me. He said he was crying that much. He couldn't get his words out. I said, I'm not surprised. And, he came last night and said, do you want to have a throw? I goes, yeah, we can do if you want. Anyway, done him 7-1, and he started laughing. I said, I just can't believe you're a world champ. I was like, no, Tay. Then we had that photo done. So, yeah, it just makes everything worth it, what you work to when you're younger.
Good times. And lastly, we can't let you go without asking you. You mentioned on the stage after that you were going to be doing some karaoke to celebrate. You were going to be singing all the songs. What songs did you end up singing on Sunday night?
I sung Shania Twain, Man I Feel Like a Woman with my mum. I couldn't stop laughing throughout it because I just realised how bad I was. And then everybody got up. I sang like Tory Jewish, I think. My sister and a few others, and we all murdered my walk-on song, Status Quo. It was honestly just one of the best things ever. But yeah, I'm definitely sticking to darts, and singing is not my thing after that night.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, the darts definitely did the talking last week, Beau. Congratulations on winning the Lakeside, your first world title, and we wish you all the best for what else is to come for the rest of the year.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks again to Beau for joining us. Now finishing up our look back on the WDF World Championship, and it was a big week for the WDF staging their first World Championship at Lakeside. How do you look back on the event as a whole? Was it a success?
I think overall it was to some extent, but it also to some extent was not, and could even be considered a failure. And the fact that 3/4 of the tickets went unsold, I think falls into that second category. Yes, some of that was beyond the control of the WDF. Having to move the event from the holiday season to a week before Easter, or a week to 2 weeks before Easter, definitely was not going to help with ticket sales. But counterpoint, the tickets weren't selling like hotcakes for the January event either. And that's something that needs to be addressed, because if you're putting all this prize money and all this organization into something and people aren't interested and people aren't going, obvious follow-up is it worth the investment? And I think the WDF is going to have to ask itself, is it worth this? And is it worth having this event if the interest isn't there? Obviously, if the finances aren't there, then there's no choice. I don't know if the finances are there, but it obviously isn't helped by not selling tickets. But I think the lack of something near a capacity crowd has to be considered a failure. And credit, to the WDF, they didn't try to pretend like the problem wasn't there. They didn't try to blame other people like some other organizations have in the past. They accepted it. And Richard Ashdown said, let's focus on the crowd that is here and how wonderful they are for the people who did come. And that's, the right way to look at it. But obviously behind the scenes, there has to be questions about whether this event financially is worth it for the WDF. It was only the first one, and there's room to grow, especially if in the future you do have players like Fallon Sherrick playing and Lisa Ashton, who might attract a few more casual attendees who obviously didn't go to this. But in terms of quality, I think the event was overall a success. Yes, there were some poor moments, and especially, in some of those earlier rounds, the quality just wasn't up to scratch. But there were also some really good performances as we got into the later rounds. And I include the second half or second 2/3 of the final in that, because, as I said, Neil Duff was averaging in the high 90s over the last 22 legs of that, and in the mid 90s over the last 7 sets. And if you look at the performances in the quarterfinals and semifinals, and a lot of the performances in the last 16, it was at the standard that the Lakeside was 5-6 years ago. So in that regard, the event has to be considered a success. The quality was there once we got through those first couple rounds. Was it enough to justify a 48-man field and a 24-woman field? I don't think so. But that's something to address going forward. I think we saw some good darts, especially in the latter stages. So in that regard, it's a success. But having 3/4 of the seats empty cannot be a success by any metric.
There is no getting away from that, is there? The ticket sales. We knew going into the tournament from what we were hearing on social media and other sites. And then, of course, seeing the event on TV, being there in person, as I was fortunate enough to be there for the opening weekend, there were a lot of empty seats, which for the WDF, for any darts organisation, that is not what you want, is it, for your first World Championship? And yes, some of it is down to them, the promotional side of things, this event being pushed back. They didn't really, like on our preview show with Matthew Kiernan, they didn't come into this event with any real momentum like they would have done if they'd have had a full tour and they'd have had a World Masters in December, then their World Championship in January. It kind of felt like it came around very quickly after such a long wait in a funny way. But given what they've had to go through, the hurdles that they've had to jump, the challenges that they've faced over the last 2 years, I think just to get this event on, they do deserve a pat on the back. And I think that is one of the things going forward that is going to give the WDF a lot of credibility, is that they have been able to put this tournament on. And there's been some great darts, as you say, that the first couple of rounds, there was some iffy games in there, but I think we were expecting that, weren't we? I don't think people were going into it thinking, we're going to see 110 averages in every game. We're going to see 90 plus averages in every game. It was going to be a lower standard to start things off. But even so, we still had some decent performances in the first few rounds. We had Jim McEwen with that 101 average, and then we saw Richard Veenstra break the record with the 104, Andy Bartons with a 103. So there was some quality in there as well. So for me, I think it was a success in terms of getting the tournament on and how it went. I think, some of the sessions overran a little bit, but I think to get to the end point, to get those champions, and we saw the stories that were coming out of the week as well, with Luke Littler, the 15-year-old, winning his first game, winning on his debut, and then at the end of it, Beau Greaves becoming the youngest winner, and Neil Duff, just before he turns 50, creating history for Northern Ireland and winning the title as well. So there were some stories. I think it kind of built during the week as well. The interest got bigger on social media, I felt, as well. But I think as a first one to get it out of the way is a step forward. But there's no getting away from it. That the tickets is a big issue. So you've got to hope now that going forward for the next 8 or 9 months leading into their next one, you'd imagine we'll be back at that traditional January slot. They've got a lot of work to do to, if it is going to be at Lakeside again, to make sure that there's going to be a lot more tickets sold next time, because I don't think you can keep doing this year in, year out, selling 20% of tickets and keep it going, because at one point the sponsors, the people putting in the money, they are going to pull the plug.
Now, we'll finish our Lakeside review with a question that only you'll answer, because it's a question about how you rated your time at the event. So anything that stuck out, good or bad, and obviously, how was it to meet the second greatest player of all time?
Yeah, it was a great weekend. I was fortunate enough to be there for the opening weekend, so the Saturday and the Sunday, all the first round games, and I came back on the Monday, and of course we had our producer Hannah there for the whole tournament in the end, apart from the final one. Unfortunately couldn't make the final, but she was there for the majority of it, and from what I heard from her, she really enjoyed it, and for me as well, it was a great trip. And got there on the Friday at Lakeside. I stayed at the hotel, the Players Hotel on the site, and I don't know, a little bit fortunate as well that I was chatting with Andrew Sinclair inside the WDF podcast. Shout out to him. But we were sat in the hotel bar, and Nick Rolls came over and said, "Do you want to join us for the 501 walk?" Which I think it might be a tradition they do at Lakeside. But the Friday before the start of the tournament, they take all the players round, walk around the venue, have a little look round before it all gets underway, which was nice to be involved in. And you could see some of the players that were making their debut looking around the venue, looking around the practice room backstage. There was that genuine excitement of getting to play in a World Championship, getting to play on that Lakeside stage for the first time, which so many of the great players in the past have been able to do. So, yeah, to be a part of that was good fun as well. And as we all know by now, I was very fortunate to beat Andrew in our game of darts, our best of 5 set game that we had that took a lot of time in the players' hotel in the bar. We managed to get that game in and managed to get it done before the last orders as well, which was good. So it was nice to get that game of in-person darts with him, and meeting Coach Stompy. That was a very nice surprise as well, coming out of breakfast, and Andrew goes, "Oh, is that Coach Stompy at reception?" And I said, "Nah, not a chance. He's got no reason to be here. He didn't qualify. He lost in the qualifiers." Sent him a message saying, "Was that you that's just checked in?" He said, "Yeah, it was, mate." So we had a little catch up, and of course we had him on the show, and he was very kind enough to have a picture as well. So yeah, that was a nice little surprise. And just one mention as well to our good friend Dave Parletti, who was back on the stage. We've not seen him play for a little while, but he managed to get a win, and I know how much that meant to him to get that win on the Lakeside stage. Didn't quite go for him in the second game, but I think that's a night that he'll remember for forever, is getting that win on the Lakeside stage. And a shout out to Kirsty Hutchinson as well, who also wore our sticker as well, making the final. So we're getting close to getting that first winner on TV, first title winner with the weekly Dartscast sticker. We've had someone get to the quarterfinals. We've now had someone get to the final. It's not far away.
No, it is definitely not that far away. Who knows? It could just be, what's the next televised event in the WDF? Hopefully it'll be then, if not in a PDC event before then. But now we'll move on to our third and final guest on this week's show, and it's with Barry Vampire.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the former Challenge Tour and Development Tour title winner, Barry Vampire. Thanks for the time, Barry. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for letting me join on your podcast. And yeah, it's good to be here, finally.
Yeah, great to have you on. And firstly, we're talking at the start of a week that you make your long-awaited debut on the European Tour. How much are you looking forward to going to Munich this weekend?
I can't describe that. I think it's taken me roughly 5 years or something to finally get over a finish line. Lost some finals for that one, so I was very happy to qualify. And like I said, I can't describe how excited I am to finally be part of the European Tour.
Well, we'll come back to the European Tour later, but let's circle back to the start for you in darts. How did you first get introduced to the sport? How old were you then?
I was probably a year or like 11 or something, or 12, maybe a little bit younger. My parents always played, my brother played, so kind of got naturally into it. And yeah, I kind of picked it more seriously up after I turned like 13, 14. Started playing some tournaments locally, and me and my brother just went, nuts. We just went everywhere at some point, national rankings after some years. And yeah, then it all began. After the national rankings, obviously I got my tour card, so that was quite a big step from national ranking to Pro Tour, of course. So yeah, now we're, 12, 14 years of it.
Well, one of your first breakthroughs I got mentioned was the Development Tour in 2015. And I think you won on the first day playing on the tour, winning the second event of the day, dropping just 5 legs. How special was that day?
Well, I was not really knowing what to expect at that stage. I was just there as a new guy, seeing how everything went. And I think I remember it correctly if I say I lost to, I think Aiden Kirk or Jamie Lewis that day, and like last 32, I was like, okay, well, I'm satisfied. I won some prize money. Like, I was happy with that. I was playing well. And then, the second tournament, I went nuts. I just played so phenomenal, and everything went in, and I just won the tournament. I was like, oh, I won? No. I didn't even realize it that quickly. Yeah, it was a very big step for myself, for my confidence. It just skyrocketed. So it was a very, proud moment in my career.
And I was looking back that year, 2015, it was a busy year for you, not just the development tour. We also saw you play out in Japan. You made the final of the Japan Open. You also played a bit of soft tip as well, making an appearance in the World Stage events. What are your memories from that time?
It was quite a busy year, actually. I had all the time to travel, of course, because I wasn't a complete pro or anything yet, so the schedule wasn't that busy. Well, going to the development tour was the first one. Of course, I won 2 tournaments, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm confident this year. Like, I feel really good. I can go anywhere and probably do well. So I went to Japan, got to the final over there. It was also a nice achievement, of course. Lost to, quite famous Japanese player, of course, Seigo Asada, which is a good friend of mine as well. And then, like you said, soft tip as well. I went to Chicago that year as well for soft tip. And then, just pretty much traveled anywhere, really. Played soft tip mostly. And then development tour was the first priority, of course. But if I did have my time, I would just travel to Spain or to Japan or America. So it was a lot of fun that year, a lot of enjoyment, and I think that's very important to have in darts. So.
And as you mentioned earlier, at the end of that year, you were to become a PDC tour card holder. Bradley Kirk turned down his tour card. You were the next highest eligible on that development tour order merit. What was that moment like when you found out the news?
I kind of, from my feeling, like I started the season off like so good that I probably put too much pressure on myself afterwards. I was like, okay, I might have a good chance at getting one. And then I kind of just dropped at the end of the season. Like, everyone was just catching up to me and passing me, and he was playing really, really good that year. It was insane to watch sometimes. And I don't know what happened in his mind that he didn't want it. He just said he wasn't ready. Obviously, I'm not going to say no myself, but like I thought he was ready, I thought. But my chance just got served to me on a plate, so I grabbed it, and yes, just felt great to have it. Kind of unexpected, of course, so makes it kind of a little bit nicer, but of course, unfortunately for Bradley, of course.
Well, at 19, you're now playing on the Pro Tour, going up against the world's best players week in, week out. How did you find that experience of stepping up to play on the professional circuit that year in 2016?
Well, I was always so motivated to play like people I always saw on the telly. And then, you get into that tournament, you just look around in the venue, you're like, okay, this is some serious stuff going on here. Who am I in this venue? I just knew if I just play my game and don't mind who I'm playing, I should be like good. But of course, they are mostly all of them were better than me. That's how I was playing, or that's how I thought. Let's just say that. And I think in my first ever weekend, I actually reached the quarterfinals of the UK Open qualifier, losing to Sam Whitlock, and I just felt like, okay, maybe I do belong here with this level. We'll just have to see the rest of the season how that goes. So I was nervous, but I kind of surprised myself in that first weekend already.
And another highlight I've got to mention from that year as well is the run to the World Youth Championship final. What was the build-up like? Because back then the tournament, it'd be played down to the final, and then thered be a 5 or 6 week break before you'd play the final. What was the build-up like in getting ready to play in that final?
To be fair, when I reached the final on the floor, I kind of felt like if I can just play the final today, I just felt like I was going to win it. Like, I I don't know how to describe it, but I was just like, I'm in the mood for that right now. I'm just gonna win. And then I already knew, of course, I wasn't gonna play that day, which is fine. But the weeks after that, I kind of, just prepared the same I did with every tournament. And I felt like it actually took too long for me to, like, get ready. I would have preferred it was like a week after or 2 weeks after maybe. But yeah, on the stage it just didn't go right for me, and Corey just played like a maniac. He was playing really well, and yeah, I felt like I just didn't show up. So that's unfortunate, but it's the worst time you can have, of course. But still a good achievement.
Definitely, and although the result didn't go your way that night, the run did get you into the Grand Slam in 2017, and it's a tournament which many of our listeners will remember you from as you battled with dartitis on the stage. How hard was it to play up there that week in Wolverhampton?
Yeah, of course, I'm like quite known for that. Unfortunately, well, I knew before the tournament that I was like in the protest. I was already like not having a good time. And then I was traveling towards the Grand Slam. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go there and just play, even if it's like a 50 average. I don't care what it's going to be. I'm just going to be there and participate. And if I feel good, I'll play better, and we'll just see what happens. And I don't know, it was nerve-wracking. It was, mentally very tiring and destroying me. It takes a lot of energy to just go up there and do your thing normally. And with, adding what happened, of course, is even worse. So mentally, I was just drained after every single day. And yeah, of course, I passed the group. I went to the last 16th. And, I don't know how I did that, but yeah, it's crazy times.
Yeah, I mean, you should take a lot of credit from what you were able to achieve that week. I mean, as you say, you won through the groups. You won 2 last leg deciders against Simon Whitlock and Cameron Menzies to go through with Gary Anderson. And the match with Cameron, we saw the emotion from you. The crowd were behind you as well. It was an emotional moment watching. What are your memories of that moment in particular?
When the first time I played with Simon, I don't think anyone understood what was happening. People also kind of just booed me, and they didn't have a clue what was happening. Which is, it's terrible if you're standing there, of course, but it's what happens. And then I won the game, and I was like, okay, at least I won this. I'm just happy to win it, but not in the most fashionable way, I guess. And then with the game with Cameron, it was just a roller coaster. I was actually playing pretty good. I was, 4-2 up or something. I was like, okay, this is kind of looking good. And then it just started getting worse and worse for my feeling. I would have preferred, of course, if I would just stand to the hockey right away and just throw my dart and boom, double, and we're done. But it just didn't happen, and the crowd was helping me, of course. And then when you hit the double, you just break down, and he broke down as well. So it was kind of very emotional. Like I said, it was just a roller coaster of emotions and all of that. And yeah, when you win, of course you're happy, but I don't think I was that happy actually.
Well, we did see you on the main stage at the UK Open last year, and the throw looked a lot smoother. What work or methods did you use to overcome the dartitis, and how would you assess your game right now?
Well, the first few months, of course, afterwards is still really tough to get something going. You don't want to practice much because you're afraid of stuff. And what I mostly did, I found out with my physio as well, that my muscles were all very much in knots. So I couldn't really stretch out my muscles that much, which was also kind of not helping me a lot. So we started doing dry needling sessions, which is just making the knot disappear, solve itself. And then I kind of felt already it was helping a lot. So I got confidence out of that. I knew that was going to help me. And then I just had to change my throw. I had to change mentality. Like, I just have to think about stuff that don't even make sense at darts. Like, just distract my mind. And then, well, I think most of it was just confidence at some point. Like, when you start seeing you're playing better again, you just feel, okay, this is the positive way. We should keep going like this. Yeah, and then eventually you have to build on that, and every single step you take is gonna help you go through it. And yeah, where I'm at now, I still have some ticks left, which is kind of annoying me as well as probably more people, I guess. But I'm trying to do my best to be faster every time, because I'm a fast player normally. I'm faster than most players, I think. Just when the ticks happen, I'm not the fastest on the planet. But I feel like I'm going in a good direction. So if I just keep going like I'm doing now, like the last couple of weeks, I'm doing better and better. So I guess there's a very good positive place for me now. And last weekend I was doing good as well, like pretty fast and playing good. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, we can see the work that you're putting in is paying off. And since the Grand Slam, of course, you've won another couple of development tour titles. You've won a challenge tour title, and we had a long break because of the pandemic. But when the development tour came back, the 4 consecutive semi-finals on the development tour to get that tour card back, how proud were you of that weekend?
Yeah, it was an absolute crazy weekend. I was actually around the top 5 of the ranking or something, and I knew other people could still win a tournament and come close to me, and then I still had to win more money than them afterwards. So what happened was some of my good friends, they both won their first development tour, so they also reached on the top of the rankings, and then I reached a semi in the meantime. I was like, okay, I'm happy. And then another semi, I was like, okay, that's nice. I think I actually, one of the matches was like 5-4, and I was like so disappointed that I lost that. And then the next day, I also reached another semi. I was like, okay. There's a good chance if I just keep this up, I might make it, but I'm still depending on what another person will do. So me and Damien Mol, actually my roommate nowadays and the practice partner, everything. Me and him were battling it out for the final spot, like the final tournament. And all I had to do was just go one round in front of him and I'll have it. And well, I reached the semis and he lost 16 or something. So yeah, it was just, I cried, of course. I was so happy to be back. But it was just like, yeah, it was pretty insane actually. I was 4 semis. I was like, I never did this before and win tournaments before, but losing 4 semis kind of hurts. But I was very happy with those 4.
Yeah, it definitely made a difference, didn't it, getting that tour card back? And of course, last year, another semi-final run, this time on the Pro Tour in Germany, and just getting on to this year, and already you're making strides qualifying for a European Tour event for the first time. And I must admit, I don't think I was the only one surprised to hear that you hadn't played in one before.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's been so many years already that I didn't qualify because normally we always had to travel to Germany, and I didn't always play in all of the tournaments because I just picked them out. I just, okay, these ones are not like 8 hours drive, then I'll just go there. And yeah, I lost quite some finals to Vincent, Dimitri, Romunekamp, Jermaine. You know, they are very experienced players. They have been on the stage so many times. And I just lost a couple of finals, 6-5, 6-4. And then it just never wanted to go my way. It's always they just, on the final leg or something, they just go like 12 darts or something like that. And yeah, there was not really much I could do about it except just playing my leg and not getting a chance. So it kind of got into my head. And yeah, then this year I just qualified for one and then another one and another one. So yeah, you see what happens. You just win one and you kind of feel, okay, I can do this again. And now it's 3 instead of 0.
Happy days. And of course, part of the European Tour experience is that you get that walk on in front of the crowd. And I was going off your Wikipedia page, your walk-on song is Unseen by Dimitri K. Out to listen to it. It seems to be a similar taste to Dirk van Duijvenbode and Jules van Dongen. Is that still your walk-on?
Yeah, but I actually have been thinking about it. Like, let's just make this clear. Like me and Dirk, for example, we listen to the same type of music. I'm not sure who's like listening to harder ones. It doesn't really matter. It's his like music. I like it. I go to festivals as well. Like, I enjoy it, but I kind of want to use it. But there's so many songs, you know. There's like a swear word in it. I can't use it. There's this in it. I can't use that. It's very picky, you know. So I actually let people vote in my family and my friends and my everyone I knew, which song do you prefer? And I actually probably not gonna walk home with hardcore music, just because the crowd will either like it or they will hate it. So I might just walk on with Danza Kuduro. That's been voted by people, so it's a very big difference, I know. But yeah, I'm having light doubts about it still, but I don't think it will be hardcore. And if it does, I'm sorry for the crowd, but I have to.
Well, it's your choice, isn't it, of course. And recently, we also saw your brother play on the Pro Tour, getting that call up via the Challenge Tour, All Demerit as a top-up player. What was it like having Carlo with you for that weekend?
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember a few days before the Pro Tour, I got a text from my manager saying, yeah, your brother can also play this weekend. And I was like, I texted him like, hey, you can play Pro Tour. And he was like, oh, for real? I was like, yeah. Oh, But he had made plans for that weekend, and I was like, you better just take your chance, because you never know if it's going to happen or not after this. I was like, yeah. So he canceled all his plans, and we made the trip to Germany, and he actually won a game as well, so it was very awesome to see that as well. Like, he got a lot of recognition, people just saying like, okay, yeah, good to see you here, and we were the fourth pair of brothers ever on the PDC tour, I think, so that's actually pretty cool. First Dutch brothers as well. So it's a lot of things you can think of that are actually pretty awesome to experience. So I was really happy, and I hope you can come back there again.
And lastly, back to you and back to this weekend. And when we're talking, we don't know the draw yet for Munich, but you're going to be making that debut. What's the plan between now and then? Are you going to be getting much practice in before? What does the rest of the week look like ahead of the big debut?
Today, I don't think I'm going to practice. I've been playing all weekend, of course, and then the trains didn't go to my hometown. So I was home very late and I had to work as well. So I'm pretty tired. But from tomorrow on, me and my brother will probably practice a couple of hours a day. And then I leave on Thursday or Friday to Munich. So I think I have like a couple of days of nice practice. Maybe just go to another friend of mine practice. So I'll just have to see. I don't have exact plans, but I just have to do my same thing that I do the last couple of months. So.
Well, I hope the rest of the week goes well for you. Wish you all the best for your European Tour debut this weekend, and of course the rest of 2022 as well. Hope it all goes well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it a lot. Good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks to Barry for joining us on this week's show. Now, we didn't do Premier League picks the last couple weeks. Well, I didn't. No one did it last week because we didn't have a show, and I was not on the previous week. But we're back, and we're gonna give our tips for night 10 at the AO Arena in Manchester. 4 matches, and it starts off with only the top 2 ranked players in the world, though they're ranked 3rd and 6th in the Premier League as things currently stand. Peter Wright against Gerwyn Price. How do you see this one?
Yeah, not a bad game to start the night, and not a bad first game of the Premier League for me to watch for. I think I've missed the last 2 or 3 weeks, so it'll be a nice one to get back and watch the world number 1 against the world number 2, and the 2 players that have had their injury problems recently. Gerwyn Price, of course, well documented about. He's had to push back his boxing charity match to May, I think it is now. So putting the darts a bit more at the forefront for now. And he's someone that needs to get some points, isn't he? Because I was looking the last 3 weeks, he's lost out in the first round. So he slipped down a little bit in terms of the race for the playoffs. Of course, there's still a long way to go. We've got 7 more nights before we get to the playoffs, but he currently finds himself 6th place in the table, 4 points behind James Wade in that 4th and final spot. So, yeah, the points are much needed for Gerwyn Price. Peter Wright, on the other hand, he's quietly gone about his business. He had that great first night. Since then, he's kind of been a little bit more steady, I think, really. He's had a lot of semi-finals. He's not gone out in the first game very often, so he's steadily picked up points, and 3rd place in the table. He's got a nice little gap on that 5th spot at the moment. But I'm going to go with the man that needs the points the most on this one. I'm going to go with Gerwyn Price. I think it will be a tight game between the world's top 2 in the rankings, but I'm going to go 6-4 to the Iceman.
Now that Michael Van Gerwen is seeming to get some consistency back, maybe it's time to make Peter Wright the handicapper's nightmare. Because since becoming world number 1, he's been inconsistent. There's been some moments where he is just flat out brilliant, but there's also just as often where he's averaging in the mid 80s. And that's not a level of inconsistency we've ever seen from him before. Yes, he's had bad matches. Yes, he's had moments where he's untouchable, but we haven't seen such giant swings from match to match, and as often as he has over the last month or so. Gerwyn Price, obviously, he's been injured, but seems to be coming back, getting back towards playing at least at a level that looks like the world number 1 or former world number 1. I think I agree with you that the consistency is closer to Gerwyn than it is to Peter right now, and I'm going to therefore go Gerwyn. But that said, Peter Wright could average 115, probably followed by averaging 88. But I'll go Gerwyn Price to get over the line. I'll go 6-4.
Second game of the night, and it is Gary Anderson against James Wade. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, obviously, there's some question marks here about whether Gary Anderson can even play. He had to withdraw from last week in Leeds due to COVID. Obviously, also withdrew from the Players' Championship events and didn't withdraw from the European Tour qualifiers because he doesn't play those, but did withdraw from everything else. James Wade's playing, well, it looks like he's back to being one of the top players in the world. He's made the final the last couple nights. Able to, over that time, beat Michael Van Gerwen, who won one of those 2 nights, beat Joe Cullen, who had won the night before that, beat Johnny Clayton, who's bouncing back to being one of the best players in the world, and beat Gerwyn Price, who's number 2 in the world. So those are, obviously every win in the Premier League is a good one, but he's been beating players who are in form, and I think that's just a little bit too much to expect that Gary Anderson will be able to stop this hot form that James Wade's currently on. And it's why James Wade, despite being one of only 2 players not to win a night, is in the top 4 as things currently stand. I think at least through the first round of these matches, he will stay in the top 4 and maybe start to close that gap on 3rd place Peter Wright. I'm going James Wade to win it. I'm going 6-1.
Yeah, and I was chatting to one of my mates the other day about the Premier League because I was trying to get a bit more info on it because I've not been watching it as closely as I have the last few weeks. But we were saying James Wade, yeah, he's one of the only players not to have won one of these nights. Maybe he's going to go the whole season, not win one of the nights, get in the top 4 and win the whole playoffs. That would just be a typical James Wade thing to do. But he's getting close, isn't he? He's made back-to-back finals the last couple of weeks. Gary Anderson, as you say, didn't play last week, withdrew because he tested positive for the virus. And since that night that he won, night 6, won that, and we were all talking about, is Gary Anderson back since then? He's lost a couple of close ones, 6-5. Of course, didn't play last week. And he finds himself really behind now, 6 points off the playoffs, bottom of the table. I think we're going to see him come back in this one. I'm going to go with Gary Anderson to make up for missing last week, and James Wade to have a defeat in the first game. But I don't say that with a lot of confidence at all. I think it will be a tight one. I'm going to go 6-4 to the Flying Scotsman.
Third quarterfinal of the night, and we get to see the player who's top of the table, although number 3 in the world, Michael Van Gerwen, to go against Johnny Clayton, who won the title a couple nights ago now and is currently 2nd in the table. So only a battle at the top. How do you see this one?
Yeah, this is probably one of the games I'm most looking forward to because Michael Van Gerwen, Johnny Clayton, they usually do serve up good games on TV or wherever they're playing. If that's the floor on the Euro Tour or on the Premier League, they usually serve up something good. So looking forward to this one. And yeah, they are the top 2 in the table going into the night, and they are the last two winners of these Premier League nights, and they're the only two players that have won more than one night in the Premier League. Johnny's picked up 2 of the titles. Michael van Gerwen is ahead on that. He's picked up 3 of the titles, and we said at the start of the season, you said it, that this new format could be what sparks Michael van Gerwen back into life, back to winning titles on the Pro Tour and winning titles on TV. And we have seen him win titles on the Pro Tour, on the floor, on the Euro Tour. And yeah, this is another big night for him because he's started to open up a little bit of a gap on top spot. He'll want to finish top and go into the playoffs in that number 1 seed position. But I'm going to go with Johnny Clayton. I think it's going to be a tight one. It's going to go all the way 6-5, but I've just got a feeling it's going to be the ferret that comes out on top. So I'm going to go 6-5 to Johnny Clayton.
Yeah, as you said, when these two play, you can't say it's always fireworks, but it's fireworks more often than not. And not many players that can so frequently and so consistently push Van Gerwen and beat Van Gerwen. That said, MVG has won the last 3 head-to-head matches between these two. Prior to that, it was only 13-10 all-time in favor of Van Gerwen, but 3 consecutive wins, 2 in the Premier League plus not this past weekend, but the previous weekend in the Players' Championship events. Van Gerwen was able to get the better of Johnny Clayton and extend his all-time lead over him to 16-10. Will he make it 4 in a row? I think he will. I just think he will. I think he's got his mojo back, and he's got a little bit of that momentum against the player who for so long has been one of his nemesis. So I'll go for MVG to make it 4 in a row against the Ferret. I'll go for him to win it 6-3.
Final quarterfinal to predict, and it is Michael Smith against Joe Cullen. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, huge match for both of them because for Joe Cullen, he enters the night just 1 point out of the playoffs. Michael Smith, despite a couple of finals, is 5 points adrift because he hasn't won a match in the last 3 nights. For Cullen, especially if Wade wins, this is to keep up with the players ahead of him in that push for the top 4. For Michael Smith, it's to stay legitimately in the competition. There is every threat that if Wade keeps winning, that it really does become 5 for 4 spots. Maybe we expect, if he's healthy, Gerwyn Price to be able to start pulling himself back into competition. But Michael Smith cannot afford to drop further back. Joe Cullen cannot afford to let those players right behind him get back in it and become embroiled, well, possibly just for 5th, but also to stay pace with Wade. I think Michael Smith, though, is going to get it done. I think he's going to right the ship. He's been a little inconsistent this year, but he's also been a little unlucky. He's averaged a ton or thereabouts first round each of the last 3 nights, couldn't get a win. At some point, he's going to get the better of a player because he's playing well enough. And I think it'll be this match. I'm going to go Michael Smith to win 6-4.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you on this one. I think Michael Smith has been a little unfortunate so far in this Premier League, and just looking at how he's performed the last few nights, he's lost some games where 102 average last week against Peter Wright, who the handicapper's nightmare. He played well in that game and then lost with an 86 average the next game, and the previous week a 99 average for Michael Smith, the week before 96 average. So he is putting in some good averages, but he's just not getting that rub of the green, that little bit of luck that sometimes you need on one of these nights, and that can be the difference sometimes. And yeah, I think he does get the better of Joe Cullen, and we should give a mention to Joe a few weeks ago winning that night in Rotterdam. I don't think we've spoke much about the Premier League since then, so he deserves a nod for that, especially as I said that he'd probably be one of the players that didn't win one of the Premier League nights. So to go and do that and beat Michael van Gerwen, I think he beat him in a decider in the final as well. So yeah, props to him for doing that. And he has put himself well in the mix, and that's a place that Michael Smith would have expected to be at the start of the season. I think maybe this is the week when he does put himself in that mix. He's going to start the night with a win anyway. I'm going to go with 6-3 to Michael Smith.
Anything else for this week?
Well, we should say, as well as we've just done our picks for the Premier League, that our last man standing competition, that the first one was won by Joseph Kilduff, and that prize is on its way. We are getting that sorted for you, Joseph, so hang tight for that. But our second competition is going to be starting this week. We were going to start it last week, but with Lakeside going on, we just didn't have the the time to keep track of everyone's picks. So we are going to start it this week. You haven't missed out. Make sure you get your pick in. Just tweet us which player you think is going to win their quarterfinal. You can only pick one of the players, and if you are successful the following week, you aren't able to choose that player. So if Michael Van Gerwen's your pick and he wins this week, next week you've got to pick one of the other 7 players, and we'll keep going until we have one player left, and that will be the winner, and they'll get a prize. So yeah, best of luck to everyone who gets involved in that. Just to say as well, big thank you to our guests for joining us. Big thank you to the WDF and Lakeside for their hospitality last week. Really appreciated that. And to all the players that we managed to have a chat with, whether it was with the microphone on or the microphone off, and a few of our listeners as well, they came over and said hello. So we really appreciate that. Appreciate the support. And of course, our sponsor, Dartwolf. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, give Dartwolf a follow at Dartwolf180, dartwolf.tv for more on that. And yeah, we'll be back next week. Probably a little more PDC stuff next week. We've not had a lot of PDC talk the last few weeks. So yeah, there'll be plenty to talk about, I'm sure, next week. And we'll see how our picks get on as well.
Yes, indeed. It's still, even though the World Championships are done, a big month of darts coming up with some Euro Tours, some Player Championship events. And, well, the push now towards the World Match Play, both on the men's and women's side, is hotting up. It's only a couple months to go for the midsummer version of the World Championships in the World Match Play. Let us know if there's anyone you want on. Let us know if there's anything you want us to discuss as we push on towards, through spring and towards summer. Until then, enjoy the darts and hang tight.